Welcome to the City of Chicago's all-new 2016 online ethics training program for city employees. The city's governmental ethics ordinance requires all city officials and employees to complete each year an ethics training program designed by the Board of Ethics. When you finish this program, you will have fulfilled that requirement for 2016. This chapter covers the statements of financial interests that certain city employees and city officials must file with the Board of Ethics each year. Like the federal and many state and local governments, the City of Chicago requires certain of its employees and officials to file annual public disclosures of their personal finances. The idea behind these disclosures, which are by law available for public inspection, is to help make government more transparent and discourage, prevent, and expose conflicts of interest. As the late Supreme Court Justice Louis D. Brandeis remarked, sunshine is said to be the best of disinfectants. The Board of Ethics distributes, collects, reviews, and maintains for public inspection statements of financial interests filed by about 3,600 persons each year. All 53 elected officials, about 500 appointed officials, and about 3,000 city employees. The board posts forms filed since 2011 on the internet with a search engine, with older forms kept in paper. The board keeps forms for 7 years from the date of filing, then destroys them with the permission of the Local Records Commission and Illinois Secretary of State. During that 7-year period, forms are available for public inspection. The board encourages all filers to use its online filing system, or EFIS, for Electronic Financial Interest System. Because EFIS utilizes an e-signature format, no facsimile of a user's handwritten signature is displayed. However, if filers choose to file using a paper form, their handwritten signature is displayed because a signature is a legally necessary element of the form. Paper filers must submit forms containing their original handwritten signature. Faxed, scanned, or photocopied forms are not acceptable. Anyone may print a blank copy of the form or fill it out using the Adobe-enabled form, both of which are available on the board's website, but only forms with original signatures will be accepted. In 2013, the criteria dictating which city employees must file the form changed. In 2012 and before, employees whose annual salary rate was at or above an announced amount had to file. But in 2013 and after, that changed. Since then, employees meeting the following criteria must file. Each mayor's office employee and each city council employee who is not solely clerical. Solely clerical means carrying out tasks of a mechanical, secretarial, or administrative nature, such as copying, filing, or word processing, with no discretion on substantive matters, and department or agency heads, deputy and assistant commissioners or directors, chief financial and accounting directors, chief grant coordinators or program managers, police personnel with the rank of lieutenant and above, and Shackman-exempt civilians, fire department personnel with the rank of battalion chief and above, and Shackman-exempt civilians, employees with policy-making authority or decision-making responsibilities for negotiating, authorizing, or approving the performance of city contracts, leases, or land use applications, employees who are responsible for inspecting or licensing any person or entity, employees whose primary duty is to invest public funds, and employees who direct, supervise, or manage 20 or more other city employees. The board works with each city department, city council committee, and aldermanic office to determine who meets these criteria and who must file. Each candidate for elected city office must file a statement of financial interests within 5 days after qualifying as a candidate. All 53 elected city officials and each appointed official, except members of boards or commissions that are solely advisory and have no authority to make binding decisions, enter into contracts, or make expenditures, must also file annual statements. The board determines which boards and commissions are city agencies and whether they are solely advisory with no authority to make binding decisions, enter into contracts, or make expenditures. Lists of all agencies whose members must or need not file are posted on the board's website. Each candidate for elected city office must file a statement of financial interests within 5 days after qualifying as a candidate. On or about March 1st of each year, the board sends a notice to file and instructions for filing to all city employees and officials who, according to city records as of late January, must file that year. These individuals then must file before June 1st. Failure to file before June 1st subjects persons to 1. A finding that they violated the law, 2. Fines of $250 per day, 3. Employment sanctions or removal from office, and 4. Having their name and violations made public by the board. It is the responsibility of persons who become required to file after March because they are newly hired or appointed into a position that meets the criteria to file their statements promptly. The board has a network of ethics officers in each city department and ward office who help keep track of new hires and help ensure that the filing requirement is met. Once they are entered into the appropriate city database, they will be notified via email of their filing requirement. Persons required to file need file only once in a calendar year. On their statements, filers must disclose, among other things, employment by a governmental unit other than the city, certain sources of outside non-city income received, if more than $1,000, such as from secondary employment, financial interests they had in persons or entities doing business in the city, financial interests they had in persons or entities doing business with the city, sources of compensation or income of more than $5,000 they, their spouse, or domestic partner received for performing business, professional, or other services from persons or entities doing business with the city, or certain other local government entities such as the Chicago Public Schools, capital gains of $5,000 or more realized in the previous year, persons or entities from whom they received gifts worth more than $250, except from family members, relatives who are registered lobbyists with the board or who are employed by or own persons or entities with city contracts, financial interests in certain real estate located in the city, any outside board memberships they have, including with nonprofits, and improper gifts they received but properly disposed of. A financial interest means here any ownership interest we hold that is valued or capable of being valued at more than $1,000, but it does not include salary or compensation from outside employment, a bank loan or savings account, shares of a mutual fund, any interest of our relative or domestic partner that is related to his or her independent occupation, business, or profession, and stock we own in a public company if we own less than 0.5% of the company's outstanding stock. Doing business with the city means one or any combination of sales, purchases, leases, or contracts to, from, or with the city, or any city agency in excess of $10,000 in any consecutive 12 months. The board sends a receipt to each filer showing that they filed and the date on which they filed. Persons found to have knowingly furnished false or misleading information to the board on their statements are subject to employment sanctions, including discharge or removal from office, and fines of up to $2,000 per violation. Officials or employees may not take any oath of office or enter or continue their duties or receive compensation from the city unless they have filed statements as required. Many city personnel must file both the state and city forms. Others file one, but not the other. Please do not confuse the city statement of financial interests with the statement of economic interests filed with the Cook County Clerk. they are different. About 3,000 city officials and employees must file that form annually with the county clerk by state law. Please answer the questions that follow. These questions should help bolster your knowledge of the city's restrictions on statements of financial interest. Oliver Wendell Douglas, an employee in the Department of Planning and Development, is also a licensed Illinois attorney. During a vacation in downstate Henning County, he performs all the legal work for a friend's purchase and closing of a farmhouse. He earns $2,500 in legal fees for this work. He is now completing his statement of financial interests and wonders whether he needs to disclose this, given that he believes he does not have a financial interest in his client. He already has his department's approval to engage in the work, and the work is unrelated to the city of Chicago. Must he? Yes. Oliver's earnings from his legal work constitute income of more than $1,000, and thus he must disclose it and the name of the person that actually paid him. This is true regardless of whether the work is unrelated to the city, or whether his department has approved of it, or that he does not have a financial interest in his client. A year later, Oliver decides to buy the farm for $35,000, and he renames it Green Acres in honor of his favorite TV show. He is completing his statement of financial interests and wonders whether he needs to disclose his ownership of the farm on the form, given that he believes he has a financial interest in it. Must he? No. Oliver does have a financial interest in the farm because his ownership interest in it is worth more than $1,000. However, the farm is located outside of the city of Chicago, and thus Oliver is not required to disclose his financial interest in it on the question that requires disclosure of the identity of any financial interests in real estate located in the city. Oliver's wife Lisa serves as the executive director of the Pixley Planters, a nonprofit organization that receives grant funding of $100,000 per year from the city's Department of Family and Support Services to promote and teach farming and agricultural techniques to underserved urban youth. Lisa's annual salary from her position is $75,000. Must Oliver disclose her position with the Pixley Planters on his statement of financial interests? Yes. Pixley Planters is doing business with the city by virtue of its $100,000 grant contract. Lisa, Oliver's spouse, is compensated more than $5,000 in a year for providing services to it, that is, by serving as its executive director. Thus on his form, Oliver must disclose the name of her employer, Pixley Planters, the nature of her services to it, business services or employment as its executive director, the government unit with which it did business, the city's Department of Family and Support Services, and categorize the amount of her compensation as more than $25,000. 5 years after buying Green Acres, Oliver sells it. He and Lisa end up buying a penthouse with what Lisa calls an adorable view of Lake Michigan. Oliver's tax preparer advises him that, due to the timing of the sale and the large appreciation of his farm's value, he is unable to take advantage of certain like-kind exchange provisions in the tax code and must treat some of the profit from the sale as a capital gain worth $50,000. Oliver is completing his annual statement of financial interests. Must he disclose the sale of his farm even though it is not located in Chicago? Yes. The ordinance requires disclosure of the identity, including the address of real estate, of all capital assets sold from which the filer realized a capital gain of $5,000 or more, unless the gain was realized from the sale of the filer's principal place of residence. Thus, Oliver must identify the farm by its address or legal description and categorize it as worth more than $25,000. Whether a filer actually realized a capital gain and its amount is a tax question, better answered by a tax professional, but any such gain must be reported unless it is realized from the sale of the filer's principal place of residence. And note, as of 2013, city personnel who file annual statements of financial interests must report any outside board on which they served in the previous year, whether paid or volunteer. This chapter covers the restrictions placed on us as city employees and officials regarding gifts and other things of value offered by non-city persons or businesses, or by fellow city employees or officials. These gift restrictions apply to every employee and official in city government. The board receives more questions about gifts than any other topic, so we cover this every year in the online training. Most government entities in the United States limit the gifts and other things of value that their employees and officials may accept. Few things erode public confidence in government more than the perception that government employees and officials benefit themselves by soliciting or accepting gifts or other valuable things through or because of their government jobs. The general gift rule is that, unless a specific exception applies, city employees and officials, like us, may not accept or solicit any anonymous gift, any cash or gift card in any amount, or any one or combination of non-cash gifts from any single source worth more than $50 in a calendar year. This $50 per source per year rule applies, even if the gift giver has no matters or business pending with our city department or agency. That is, even if the gift giver has no city connection at all. So, unless a specific exception allows it, we can't accept or solicit any anonymous gift, any cash, any gift card, or any other items together whose worth is more than $50 per year from a single source. Before covering the exceptions, we want to cover 3 more rules regarding gifts or other things that we may never accept under any circumstances. 1. We may not accept any gift, item, or service if there is an understanding between us and the person offering or giving it to us that our official city actions, decisions, or judgments will be influenced by the gift, item, or service. 2. We may not accept an honorarium. That is, we may not accept any gift or money for participating in speaking engagements, lectures, or discussion forums in the course of our city employment or service. 3. We may not double dip. That is, we may not solicit or accept anything of value from anyone other than the city in return for giving advice or assistance on matters concerning city business, unless that city business is wholly unrelated to our own city job or responsibilities. This is, on one hand, an anti-bribery law. However, bribery is criminal activity and goes beyond government ethics laws. On the other hand, for ethics purposes, it means that we can't solicit or receive anything of value from anyone other than the city for doing the same thing the city already pays us to do, or for giving advice or assistance that's related to our official city responsibilities. This means, among other things, that we may not accept tips or gratuities from non-city persons to do what the city pays us to do. Gifts or other items or services of value include lunches, dinners, favors, food baskets, swag bags, flowers, golf greens fees, tickets to sports, entertainment events, charitable or political receptions or fundraisers, or promises of future employment, really anything of value. The no-cash $50 per year rule is designed so that our intentions or state of mind are not important. We would still violate this law by accepting a $10 bill from someone, or by accepting a combination of lunches from someone that adds up to more than $50 in a year, unless a specific exception applies, even though we honestly believe that, or even if it's true that, the money or lunches would not or did not influence our official city actions. Our intentions, or the fact that we believe we can't be or were not influenced by a cash gift, a gift card, or by non-cash gifts worth more than $50 in a year from a single source, do not matter here. The restrictions mentioned so far also apply to gifts, favors, or other things given or offered to our spouse or domestic partner, or immediate family members living with us. The ordinance refers to these people as our covered relatives. Question: does the ordinance prohibit us or our covered relatives from accepting any and all cash gifts, gift cards, or gifts worth more than $50 in a year from all persons? No, it doesn't. There are 9 exceptions to the no cash $50 per person per year rule. 1. It doesn't prohibit us from paying fair market value for any item or service. 2. It doesn't prohibit us from accepting things from our own family members or relatives, including cash, gift cards, or anything else in any amount. 3. It doesn't prohibit us from accepting opportunities, loans, or services available to the public on the same terms, like sales promotions, museum passes made available to the general public by the Chicago Public Library or aldermanic offices, or parking discounts offered to employees of local businesses. 4. It doesn't prohibit us from accepting awards publicly presented in recognition of our public service, like plaques or paperweights, as long as the awards are not cash, checks, or gift cards. 5. It doesn't prohibit us from accepting gifts on behalf of the city, but we must promptly report our acceptance of any gifts on behalf of the city to the Board of Ethics and the Comptroller's Office. For a gift to qualify as an acceptable gift to the city, it must be something that we, our city department, or the city itself can use for official business, or something displayable or consumable in a city office for the public's benefit. Examples the board has seen are communications equipment, software, television sets, or art that can be hung in or displayed in city government office space to which the public has access, or flowers or food baskets that can be set out in a public space for the public to enjoy. 6. It doesn't prohibit us from accepting a gift from a personal friend unless we have reason to believe that the gift was given to us because of our official city position or employment. Please note that the Board of Ethics advises that we should not rely on this exception unless our friend is someone we know independently of or prior to our city position. 7. It doesn't prohibit us from accepting reasonable travel or hosting expenses in connection with attending meetings, public events, appearances, or ceremonies related to official city business, if the expenses are offered by the event's sponsor. However, we must get pre-approval from the Board of Ethics and then report these expenses to the board within 10 days of accepting them. What is a sponsor? In past cases, the board has determined that the sponsor of an event means a person or entity that plays a substantial role in organizing the event, for example, by planning the menu, entertainment, or helping to assemble its entire guest list. Buying a table or two at the event, even if being honored as a platinum sponsor, for example, is not enough to make a person a sponsor for purposes of the ethics ordinance. 8. It does not prohibit us from accepting materials or travel expenses for meetings, events, or functions related to a public or governmental educational purpose. However, we must receive pre-approval from the Board of Ethics and then report back to the board within 10 days of having attended the meeting, event, or function. 9. It doesn't prohibit us or our covered relatives from accepting anything of value resulting from any non-city job, business, or community activity of ours, approved by our department head if necessary, or of our covered relatives, as long as what is offered hasn't been offered because of our official city position or employment and is provided to others in similar situations. Those are the exceptions. Before we, or our covered relatives, accept any gift, we should be sure that one of the foregoing exceptions applies. If in doubt, ask an ethics officer or the Board of Ethics. As a wise city employee and wise mayor have reminded us in previous trainings, better to be safe than sorry. No gift is worth an ethics violation on your record or the damage to your reputation it will cause. With a few exceptions, the ordinance also prohibits us, as city employees or officials, from giving gifts to or donating or soliciting money for gifts for any of our superior employees or officials, including the mayor. And it also prohibits commissioners, deputies, supervisors, managers or foremen, etc., from accepting gifts from subordinate employees who earn less city pay than they themselves earn, and from coercing gifts from any subordinate. There are 4 exceptions where gifts to superiors can be offered and accepted. They are common sense, really. If there is a personal relationship between them that justifies it. At times when gifts are traditionally given or exchanged, like birthdays, office holiday parties, or Secret Santas. But under these circumstances, the gift must cost less than $10 and may not be cash or check. Gift cards are acceptable in this circumstance. The limit does not apply to office food or refreshments like a potluck. Employees can invite their superiors or bosses to their homes as they would invite their personal friends. For example, to watch sporting events, attend a party, and eat and drink. And on infrequent occasions of personal or life significance, like marriage, illness, death of a family member, birth or adoption of a child, retirement or resignation, employees may contribute up to $20 or solicit it from other employees for an appropriate gift or for an office party, or they can make direct gifts to their superiors. There is no limit on these direct gifts. The Board of Ethics cautions everyone to treat gifts between city employees and officials as a matter of good human resources management. Even if a gift would not be prohibited by law, please, before giving or accepting a gift to or from another city employee or official, consider whether the gift will negatively impact workplace morale or create an appearance of favoritism. Ensure that it conforms to any departmental or office rules. Certain departments have a no-gift policy, so be sure to check with your own department. Ensure that no person is or was under pressure to contribute, and remember that no gift can be given or accepted if there is an understanding that city actions or decisions will be affected by the gift. So, what do we do if we receive a gift that violates the ordinance's gift laws? We cannot keep it. The ordinance allows us to accept it on behalf of the city, if appropriate, return it promptly to the giver, transfer it to an appropriate charity, or just pay for it. Note, if we file an annual statement of financial interests with the board, we must disclose on that form all such gifts we returned or transferred. What gifts must we report? We're often asked this question. The ordinance requires that we report 1. To the board, all city-related reasonable hosting or business-related travel paid by any person other than we ourselves or by the city within 10 days of acceptance. 2. Any gifts accepted on behalf of the city to the board and to the comptroller. Also, as noted above, if we file a statement of financial interests, we must report 3. All gifts received in the previous year from a single source worth more than $250, other than gifts from our family or domestic partners, and 4. Any gifts we transferred to a charity or returned because they would otherwise have been prohibited. The board will, of course, accept and keep copies of other gift-related disclosures. For example, any letters we send to givers returning gifts that are returned due to a departmental gift ban. And we cannot solicit any gift or contribution on behalf of a third party, such as a charity, church, or other outside organization, from any person that we know has or is seeking city action that we can directly affect. Always consider appearances. City service is public service. The success of each one of us depends on public trust. Violations of the gift restrictions and laws reflect badly on all of us. The Board of Ethics advises that even if we are offered a gift or other thing of value, and accepting it is not prohibited by law, we should always consider whether our acceptance of the gift or item might create the perception that our judgment or independence as a city employee or official could be compromised because of who is offering the gift or item to us. The board advises that we act conservatively and just say, "No thanks." Know your own department's or office's rules. The Governmental Ethics Ordinance is a floor, not a ceiling. Any city department, agency, or aldermanic office may adopt stricter rules. Some city departments have adopted a zero-gift policy. If we're offered something of value, even a $10 lunch, we need to know and follow our department's own rules. Those rules may prohibit us from accepting it, even if the ordinance would allow it. Note, these gift laws apply not only to city employees and officials who accept gifts, but also to persons who offer or give them. No person may offer with the intent to violate or make any gift that violates these laws. If we believe these or any other ethics provisions have been violated, we have a duty to report the possible violation to the City Inspector General. We are on the front lines of the effort to promote and maintain accountable and honest government. This duty to report extends to everyone required to take this training. There are several options for reporting allegations of corruption, unlawful activity, or other misconduct, waste, or inefficiency. Either online at chicagoinspectorgeneral.org, by phone at 866-IG-TIP-LINE, by email at reportcorruption@chicagoinspector.org, by fax at 773-478-3949. The ordinance provides explicit protection for those who report such violations in the whistleblower protection provisions. City officials, employees, and contractors also have a duty to cooperate with the Inspector General as it conducts investigations. This cooperation may include, among other things, requests for interviews, documents, electronic records, or access to a department's premises. Persons found to have violated these laws are subject to severe penalties. Following an investigation and final disposition through a hearing or settlement, persons who violate these restrictions are subject to employment sanctions up to and including discharge, and can be fined between $1,001 and $5,000 for each violation, and their names and violations are released publicly. Please answer the questions that follow. These questions should help bolster your knowledge of the city's restrictions on gifts. Oliver Wendell Douglas, an attorney in the Department of Planning and Development, dreams of leaving the law and the big city and becoming a farmer. His well-to-do mother, Eunice, sends him a check for $1,000 to buy a combine machine. Oliver's wife, Lisa, always cautious, advises him to check with his department's ethics officer, Sam Drucker, to ensure that he can accept this gift and find out whether he needs to report it since it's cash. Drucker advises Oliver that the gift is acceptable and that he need not report it. Is Drucker's advice correct? Yes. The ordinance allows Oliver to accept unlimited gifts of cash, gift cards, or other things from family members. He need not report it to the Board of Ethics or to his department. Mr. Eustace Haney, a businessman who owns a real estate development company and another that buys and sells general machinery, hears of Oliver's desire to buy a farm combine. He offers to sell Oliver a machine for $500, which, he tells Oliver, reflects a 20% discount from the machine's market price, just for him. Mr. Haney tells Oliver that, in his opinion, it's okay and ethical, as both the sale and Oliver's farm have nothing to do with city business, and besides, Haney has no development matters pending before Oliver or his city department. Can Oliver take advantage of this discount? No. This 20% discount, worth $125, 1. Is a gift from Haney to Oliver, as it's not offered to members of the general public. 2. Is worth more than $50. And 3. Is from a source other than a family member or personal friend. Therefore, Oliver cannot accept it, even though Mr. Haney's company has no dealings with Oliver's department. Oliver must decline or pay the full price of $625. Oliver has become an expert on urban rooftop gardens through his city job. Hank Kimball, who heads the development department in Hooter County, invites Oliver to Cannonball University in Hooterville to be part of a panel discussion on harnessing energy-efficient, sustainable solar power for growing crops on urban and rural rooftops. A speech on the sustainable sun, Kimball calls it. Hank says that the university will pay for Oliver's travel expenses, including round-trip airfare, one night's lodging, and a dinner with the university's president, Newt Kiley. Oliver calls the Board of Ethics, asking whether he can accept this invitation and these expenses. Can he? Yes. This speech is related to Oliver's job, and provided he has his department head's approval to speak and attend, he may accept, as it is an educational trip and also helps the reputation and prestige of the city and Oliver's department. However, Oliver is advised that he must report his acceptance of these expenses to the board within 10 days of his speech. The board will make this report public and may not accept any gifts or honoraria for his participation. By contacting the board, he also meets his requirement to receive pre-travel approval from the board as well. Oliver helps negotiate the financing for a public-private partnership to build a working farm and open land in Chicago. Mr. Haney's firm then bids on and receives a contract to develop part of the agricultural center. Ebb Dawson, an employee of the firm, sends an email to Oliver offering to take him to dinner to celebrate. Ebb also writes that he thinks this is ethical because it will be reasonable hosting. Oliver contacts Sam Drucker, his department's ethics officer. Sam advises Oliver that he may eat dinner with Ebb and discuss business, but should pay his own way. Is Sam's advice correct? Yes. While this dinner would be acceptable by Oliver if worth less than $50 to Oliver, by accepting it, he would raise a reasonable question as to whether the dinner was a tip or gratuity, in violation of the prohibition against accepting anything of value in return or exchange for assistance on city business. And he is advised that this is not legitimately considered reasonable hosting because business does not need to be discussed over dinner. Hence, Sam's advice is good. Oliver should pay his own way to avoid any potential violation. Oliver accepts the dinner invitation and tells Ebb he will pay his own way. But Ebb is persistent and tells Oliver that if Oliver allows Ebb to pay for their entire dinner, Oliver can, in turn, take Ebb to dinner later and pay for Ebb, and that this would cancel out any violation of the ordinance. The bill arrives and Oliver has ordered more than $50 of food. Is Ebb correct? No. This dinner is worth more than $50 to Oliver. Thus, by accepting it, he would violate the ordinance. Later taking his host out for a dinner with the intent to reciprocate would not cancel the first gift or violation. Instead, it would just constitute a gift from Oliver to Ebb, which is not prohibited. Oliver should simply pay for his share of the dinner. This chapter will help you understand the restrictions imposed by Chicago's governmental ethics ordinance on making or accepting campaign or political contributions. Through October 2012, these restrictions were in a standalone chapter of the city's municipal code called the Campaign Financing Ordinance, Chapter 2-164. On November 1, 2012, they were moved into the Governmental Ethics Ordinance, which is Chapter 2-156 of the Municipal Code. The Board of Ethics interprets this law and enforces these restrictions. In essence, Chicago's laws limit the amount of political contributions that certain persons or businesses may make in a year to candidates for elected city office or elected city officials or city employees or officials running for non-city offices or to any of their political committees. A candidate means any person who takes the action necessary under Illinois law to attempt to qualify for nomination for election, election to, or retention in a city office, or receives contributions or makes expenditures, or gives consent for any other person to receive contributions or make expenditures with a view to bringing about his or her nomination for election, election to, or retention in a city office. A committee or political committee means a committee as established under and subject to the Illinois Election Code as amended. A person means any individual, entity, corporation, partnership, firm, association, union, trust, estate, as well as any parent or subsidiary of any of the foregoing, regardless of whether it is operated for profit. Political contribution means any gift, subscription, loan, advance, deposit, or allotment of money, or anything else of value given or transferred by one person to another, whether by check, cash, draft, payroll deduction, pledge, or promise, for the purposes of influencing in any way the outcome of any election. There are also certain exceptions, things that are not considered political contributions. 1. Market rate bank loans. 2. Providing up to $150 of services for hosting a political meeting or reception in one's own residence. And 3. The sale of food or beverages for use in a campaign if the sale price is at least at the seller's cost. No public official, city employee, candidate for elected city office, lobbyist, or office employee or agent of any political organization may intentionally solicit, accept, offer, or make political contributions on city property. City property means any building or portion of any building owned or leased by the city, but does not include any part of a building that is rented or leased from the city by a private person or private entity. Candidates, their spouses, domestic partners, or other relatives living with them may not solicit or accept anything of value, such as a political contribution, based on a mutual understanding, either implicit or explicit, that the candidate's votes, official actions, decisions, or judgments concerning city business would be influenced thereby. And no person may give or offer to any candidate for city elected office any such thing. The law presumes that anything that is worth $50 or less does not involve such a mutual understanding. But that is just a presumption. An investigation may show that even a mere $25 contribution involved such a mutual understanding, and that would violate the law. In addition to the restriction on the preceding page, which is really a bribery prohibition, the Ethics Ordinance limits certain persons to $1,500 in political contributions in a calendar year to 1. Any single candidate for elected city office or elected official of the city, or to his or her authorized political committee, or 2. To any single elected city official, or to his or her authorized political committee, or 3. To any city official or employee running for any non-city elected office, or to his or her authorized political committee. The persons who are limited to $1,500 in contributions per reporting year to any single candidate for elected city office, or elected city official, or to city officials or employees running for any non-city elected office, or to their authorized political committees are 1. Lobbyists registered with the city, or 2. Persons doing business with, or that have done business with, the city or its sister agencies, namely the Chicago Transit Authority, Board of Education or Chicago Public Schools, Chicago Park District, Chicago City Colleges, or the Metropolitan Pier and Exposition Authority within the preceding 4 years, or 3. Persons seeking to do business with the City of Chicago, the Chicago Transit Authority, the Board of Education or Chicago Public Schools, the Chicago Park District, Chicago City Colleges, or the Metropolitan Pier and Exposition Authority. Doing business means any one or combination of sales, purchases, leases, or contracts to, from, or with the city or any city agency or other named sister agency in an amount in excess of $10,000 in any 12 consecutive months. Seeking to do business means 1. Taking any action within the past 6 months to obtain a contract or business from the city or other named sister agency when, if such action were successful, it would result in the persons doing business with the city or other named sister agency, and the contract or business sought has not been awarded to any person. Or, seeking to do business also means 2. Any matter that was pending before the City Council or any City Council committee in the 6 months prior to the date of the contribution, if that matter involved the award of loan funds, grant funds, bond proceeds, bond inducement ordinances, leases, land sales, zoning matters, the creation of tax increment financing districts, concession agreements, or the establishment of a Class 6B Cook County property tax classification. For purposes of the $1,500 limitation described in the previous pages, contributions to a candidate's or elected official's authorized political committees are considered contributions to the candidate or elected official. The Board has determined in past cases that a sitting city elected official may not be considered both a candidate for elected city office and an elected official of the city for purposes of this $1,500 per reporting year contribution limitation. This means that a company or person that is doing or seeking to do business with the city or one of its named sister agencies cannot contribute $1,500 to a sitting city elected official during a calendar year and then contribute another $1,500 during that same calendar year to the elected official as a candidate for his or her city office. The Board has also determined that if a city elected official is also a candidate for a non-city, non-federal elected office, for example, ward committeeman, judge, county board, or the state's General Assembly, a person or company subject to this $1,500 contribution limitation may, during the same reporting year, contribute $1,500 to the city elected official's city committee and another $1,500 to that same individual's committee for the non-city elected office. And if that non-city elected office involves both a primary and a general election, the contributor may make another $1,500 contribution for the general election, thus allowing up to $4,500 in political contributions to various committees of this particular city employee or official. Note: political contributions to candidates for federal office, such as U.S. House of Representatives, U.S. Senate, and President, are governed by federal laws. The ordinance also imposes a limitation on soft money contributions, a contribution to any political fundraising committee which, during the calendar year in which the contribution is made, has itself made contributions or given financial support in excess of 50% of its total receipts for the year to a particular candidate or elected official, or to his or her authorized committee, is then considered to be a contribution to that particular candidate or elected official. Note also that the Supreme Court case, Citizens United, addressed so-called independent expenditures, but not direct political contributions to a candidate or candidate's authorized political committee. An independent expenditure is a contribution made to a committee that is independent of a candidate's committee, but that the recipient committee then spends in order to support or attack a candidate. these expenditures are addressed by Illinois state law, but not by Chicago's law, except for this 50% rule discussed above. An entity and its subsidiaries, parent company, or otherwise affiliated companies, and any of their employees, officers, directors, and partners who make a political contribution for which they are reimbursed by the entity or its affiliates are, for purposes of this $1,500 political contribution limitations, considered a single person. But note, nothing in this provision prohibits such an employee, officer, director, or partner from making his or her own political contributions, as long as that contribution is not reimbursed by the person or entity with which he or she is affiliated, or by which he or she is employed, even if that person or entity has already made the maximum contribution allowed under city ordinance. No person shall make any cash contribution to any candidate in an amount in excess of $250. The Board of Ethics has determined that cash here means currency, cashier's checks, and money orders. It does not mean personal checks. Persons or political committees that solicit, accept, offer, or make contributions in excess of these $1,500 limitations are subject to being found in violation of the ordinance and to a penalty of 3 times the amount of the excess contribution. So, if a company doing business with the city is found, after an investigation and probable cause or hearing process, to have violated the ordinance by contributing $2,500 to an alderman in a calendar year, this contributor and the alderman's committee are each subject to a $3,000 fine, 3 times the amount of the $1,000 excess contribution, for a total of $6,000 in fines for that violation. After the board makes a determination of a violation, the determination and the penalties assessed are made public. However, the law provides a safe harbor provision which states that there shall be no violation of these limitations if the contributor returns or requests in writing the return of the contribution within 10 days of the recipient's or contributor's knowledge of the violation. The Board of Ethics regularly monitors these contribution limitations by tracking political contributions as reported by law to the Illinois State Board of Elections. It refers to the Office of the Inspector General as complaints the names and contributions of all contributors who have contributed more than $1,500 to city elected officials or candidates or their authorized committees in a calendar year. The Board has referred thousands of such potential violations to the Office of Inspector General, which may then investigate them to discover whether the contributors were actually subject to the ordinance's $1,500 limitation at the time of the contribution that exceeded $1,500 in a single year. But it is up to the Inspector General to adhere to the 10-day safe harbor provision. Note that the contribution limitations in the Ethics Ordinance are not a so-called pay-to-play type law, that, if violated by an excessive contributor and elected official or candidate, or their authorized committee, would cause the excessive contributor's city contract or other regulatory action to be void, or bar the excessive contributor from future governmental contracts or other transactions. Rather, for that to occur, it would need to be established through an investigation that the contracts, etc., were entered into in violation of the ordinance as a result of the excessive contribution. The Ethics Ordinance explicitly allows city agencies or departments to impose stricter rules. For example, the mayor has, by executive order, prohibited the following persons from making any political contributions to him or to his political committee: city contractors and subcontractors, their owners spouses and domestic partners, registered lobbyists, and all city employees and appointed officials. These orders also prohibit city contractors or subcontractors from coercing, compelling, or intimidating their employees into making such contributions, or bundling or soliciting others to bundle such contributions. Note: Bundling means collecting contributions from more than one source and then delivering them through one person to the mayor or his political committee. These executive orders also provide that 1. The Board of Ethics shall not accept a lobbyist registration statement from a lobbyist the board finds to have violated the order. 2. City employees or appointed officials who violate them are subject to discipline up to and including removal from office or termination. And 3. Any contract negotiated, entered into, or performed in violation of any of these orders' provisions can be terminated by the city, and any bid or proposal submitted in violation of the order is subject to rejection by the city. We, as city employees or officials, are subject to the provisions of the mayor's executive orders, but are not, by virtue of being city employees or officials, subject to the $1,500 limitations on contributions to any other elected city official or candidate for elected city office, or city employee or official who is a candidate for any non-city office. Note, however, if you, as a city employee or official, have done or are seeking to do business with a sister agency, like the Chicago Transit Authority, then you are subject to these limitations. Finally, please remember that any individual or entity who wishes to contribute to any candidate for elected city office, elected city official, or city employee or official who is running for any other non-federal elected office in the state of Illinois, or to any of their political committees, is subject to the political contribution limitations in the Illinois Election Code. These state contribution limits are imposed upon everyone, including each of us, as city employees and officials, but the $1,500 political contribution restrictions imposed by city law are lower in amount than those imposed by state law. However, as explained above, these city restrictions are not imposed on everyone. Please answer the questions that follow. These questions should help bolster your knowledge of the city's restrictions on Chicago's campaign financing and political contribution restrictions. Hotz Cake Inc. has a 5-year, $100,000 per year city contract from 2015 through 2019 through the Chicago Fire Department to provide breakfast 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to firefighters in their firehouses. Having never before made any political contributions, Hotz Cake, now in March 2016, wishes to contribute the maximum $1,500 to each of the 50 aldermen, the clerk, and treasurer. However, Hotz Cake's lawyer, Joe Carson, advises it that the city's ethics ordinance prohibits this because companies doing business with the city, like Hotz Cake, are limited to a grand total of $1,500 in political contributions in a year. Is Carson's advice correct? No. The ordinance permits a person doing business with the city, such as Hotz Cake, to make no more than $1,500 in political contributions to any single elected city official or candidate during a reporting year. The company can thus make these 52 contributions, but may not contribute any more to any of these aldermen or the clerk or treasurer until January 1st, 2017. Hotz Cake Inc. has 2 owners, sisters Eva and Zizi Gabor. Attorney Carson advises them that they each may also make additional personal contributions in 2016 to each of these 52 elected city officials, so long as their company does not reimburse them for their contributions. Is this advice correct? Yes. The ethics ordinance provides that the owners of a company or person which is itself subject to the $1,500 yearly contribution limitations are not subject to these limitations as long as 1. That company or person does not reimburse them, and 2. The owners themselves are not subject to the limitations, for example, as registered lobbyists or persons doing or seeking to do business with the city or its sister agencies, and 3. The elected officials' campaign committees report these contributions in accordance with state law. In fact, The Illinois State Board of Elections has set the current limit for such individual contributions at $5,400 per election cycle for individuals like these sisters. Hots Cake Inc. contributes $1,000 to 51st Ward Alderman Ralph Monroe's political committee on April 1, 2016, then another $1,000 to the same committee on December 31, 2016. The Board of Ethics picks up on this apparent violation and refers it to the Office of the Inspector General. During the Inspector General's investigation, the company and the political committee are both informed by the Inspector General of the 10-day safe harbor provision, but do not take advantage of it. The case is then presented to the Board of Ethics, which determines that both Hots Cake and Alderman Monroe's committee violated the law for the excess contribution. Fire Department Commissioner Sam Drucker is informed of this violation and worriedly contacts the Board of Ethics to find out whether Hots Cake's contract is in jeopardy due to the over-contribution violations. Is this contract in jeopardy for this reason? No. Because neither Hots Cake nor Alderman Monroe's committee took advantage of the 10-day safe harbor provision, they both have indeed violated the ethics ordinance by the making and acceptance of $2,000 in contributions in calendar year 2016. However, this $500 excess contribution violation does not cause Hots Cake's contract to be voidable or otherwise jeopardize it under city law. Commissioner Drucker can relax about that. However, both Hots Cake and Alderman Monroe's political committee will be fined 3 times the $500 excess contribution, or $1,500 each, and their violations will be made public. In 2017, the Gabor sisters sell their Hots Cake stock to J. Summers, Inc., a food products conglomerate. Hots Cake remains a subsidiary of J. Summers, Inc., which has no contracts with any government entity in Illinois. In March 2017, Hots Cake contributes $1,500 to the political committees of all 50 aldermen, the clerk, and the treasurer. In July 2017, the J. Summers Company wishes to contribute $500 of its money to each of these committees. Its lawyer, Edward Heimberger, calls the Board of Ethics to ask whether these $500 contributions are permitted. Are they allowed? No. Hots Cake is doing business with the city and is therefore subject to the ordinance's $1,500 per elected official or committee per year contribution limitations. Its parent company, J. Summers, Inc., is subject to the very same limitation because both entities are considered the same person for purposes of the ordinance. This is true even though the parent company does not itself have any city or sister agency contracts. This chapter covers the restrictions and city laws and policies that apply to nepotism, supervising or hiring your relatives or domestic partner, or supervising contracts with entities that employ or are owned by your relatives or domestic partner. In private business, hiring, supervising, or contracting with one's relatives or domestic partners is often acceptable. However, in city government, it is severely restricted. The word nepotism comes from the ancient Latin word nepos, or nephew. The practice of granting special or unfair advantages to one's family members goes back much farther than the Roman Empire, however. Because actual nepotism, or even the perception that there is nepotism, damages public confidence in government, nearly all governmental entities in the United States regulate whether and when their employees and officials' family members can work for or have contracts with the government. Chicago's laws impose severe restrictions, but luckily they are pretty simple to follow. Unfortunately, the prevalence of nepotism in government has become the subject of sarcasm, as illustrated in this cartoon. First, what is a relative? Relative means a person related to a city employee or official as a spouse or as, whether by blood or adoption, parent, child, brother, sister, aunt, uncle, niece, nephew, grandparent, grandchild, father-in-law, mother-in-law, son-in-law, daughter-in-law, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, step-parent, step-child, step-brother, step-sister, or half-brother or half-sister. Second, what is a domestic partner? This term is defined in the city's Health Benefits Ordinance. The ordinance prohibits us, as city employees or officials, from hiring or advocating the hiring of our relatives or domestic partners in any city agency or department in which we serve or exercise authority. It also prohibits us from employing or exercising supervisory authority over any relative or domestic partner of ours. As the Board of Ethics has interpreted the term, employing or exercising supervisory authority with respect to another includes, but is not limited to, assigning their work duties, supervising or managing them on the job, signing or approving their timesheets, signing or approving their administrative leave, vacation, furlough, compensated time, or sick leave requests, and approving their salary increases, promotions, or performance reviews. There is only one exception. Aldermen may employ their spouses, domestic partners, or other relatives as members of their personal staff, only as city employees in that position, not as city contractors, but may not hire or retain their relatives, spouses, or domestic partners as independent contractors paid with city funds, or as staffers of council committees on which they serve, unless these relatives or domestic partners were already retained in that same position before February 10, 2010. If our relative or domestic partner is employed by or has contracts with a person or company that does city work, the ordinance prohibits us from exercising contract management authority with respect to that person or company. City employees and officials who file annual statements of financial interests must disclose whether their spouse, domestic partner, immediate family members, or other relatives residing with them are employed by or own, in full or in part, a city contractor. The ordinance also prohibits us from using our city position to help our relative or domestic partner obtain a job or position with any person or company over whose city work we exercise contract management authority. Contract management authority means being personally involved in or having direct supervisory responsibility for the formation or performance of a city contract. It includes preparing specifications, evaluating bids or proposals, negotiating terms, supervising performance, or approving payment vouchers. And, under the city's personnel rules, if we are employees of any executive city department, that is, any department other than City Council, then our spouse or domestic partner may not have a financial interest in any city contract if we exercise contract management authority with respect to any of the contractor's city contracts or business. The rules are stricter for personnel in the mayor's office. Non-clerical employees of the mayor's office and members of the mayor's security detail and their spouses or domestic partners may not do business with the city or its sister agencies, or have an ownership interest in any entity doing or seeking to do business with the city or its sister agencies, or that is a subcontractor on any city or sister agency contract. For purposes of this personnel rule, doing business means any one or combination of sales, purchases, leases, or contracts worth more than $10,000 in any consecutive 12-month period. Sister agency means the Chicago Public Schools or the Board of Education, the city colleges, the CTA, the Chicago Park District, the Metropolitan Pier and Exposition Authority, and the Public Building Commission. Ownership interest means an interest that represents more than 5% of a business entity, regardless of how that entity is organized, a corporation, LLC, partnership, sole proprietorship, trust, etc. For purposes of this personnel rule, financial interest means any interest that 1. We hold from which we receive or are entitled to receive more than $2,500 per year, or 2. That has a cost or present value of $5,000 or more, or 3. That represents more than 10% of any business entity or legal entity organized for profit, but it does not include our employment or a time or demand deposit in a bank or other financial institution, or shares of a mutual fund, or ownership through purchase at fair market value or inheritance of less than 1% of the shares of any corporation if the shares are publicly traded. Any city department, ward office, or agency may impose rules that are stricter than those in the ordinance. Always remember to check with your own department about its rules. They may prohibit one cousin from supervising another. For example, the ethics ordinance doesn't prohibit this because cousin is not included in the ordinance's definition of relative. If in doubt, please contact the Board of Ethics and we will find out for you. Please answer the questions that follow. These questions should help bolster your knowledge of the city's restrictions on relatives or domestic partners. Ralph Monroe and her brother Alf are both employed as carpenters in the Department of Fleet and Facilities Management in the same working unit. Neither supervises the other. Hank Kimball, their newly hired foreman, believes that there is a violation of the ethics ordinance and that they cannot serve together. Is Hank right? Is there a violation of the ordinance? No. The ordinance does not prohibit relatives or spouses from working side by side in the same unit, bureau, or department. What it does prohibit is one relative from employing or exercising supervisory authority over another. However, having two siblings work together in the same unit presents a management issue, and a department is advised to take steps to ensure that any relevant collective bargaining agreement doesn't prohibit it, and that the morale of other employees isn't affected. Ralph gets appointed by the mayor as alderman of the newly created 51st Ward of the City of Chicago, where she will serve until a special election can be held. She hires her brother Alf as her chief of staff, and he becomes a city employee. Her friend, Fred Ziffel, tells her that this is not allowed, and this situation created a scandal in the City of Baltimore City Council. Not wishing to run afoul of Chicago's ethics ordinance, Ralph calls the Board of Ethics for advice. Can she hire her brother as her chief of staff as a city employee? Yes. The ordinance doesn't prohibit an alderman from hiring and supervising her relative as a member of her personal staff, as long as the relative is hired as a city employee. Doris Ziffel is an assistant commissioner in the Department of Water Management, or DWM. Her department has issued a request for qualifications, or RFQ, for a new design for water mains, although Doris has done no work on drafting the RFQ. Pepper and Patterson Inc., P&P, an engineering firm, has submitted a response to the RFQ and proposes to change water mains into a new synthetic porcelain it has developed, Hydropork. Doris's son Arnold is employed by P&P, although he too has done no work on its RFQ submission. Doris's husband Fred, a retired attorney, believes that no contract can be awarded to P&P while Arnold works for it, and Doris works for DWM. Doris calls the Board of Ethics for clarification. Is P&P disqualified from bidding on this contract while Arnold works for it and while Doris works for DWM? No. The ordinance does not prohibit a person who employs a relative of a city employee from bidding on a city contract, even where, as here, the city employee's department would be awarding the contract. Rather, the ordinance prohibits Doris, the DWM employee, from exercising contract management authority over her son's employer, P&P. Here, this means that Doris may not work at all on or try to influence the award of the contract or supervise the performance of P&P should it be selected by her department. P&P is awarded a contract to design 300 miles of new water main in July 2015. Doris is completing her annual statement of financial interests in March 2016. Must she disclose Arnold's employment with P&P? Yes. The ethics ordinance is clear that Doris must disclose that her son works for a city contractor, although her son is not prohibited from working for a city contractor, and his employer is not prohibited from having a city contract, even with her department. She must, however, work with her department to ensure that she does not exercise management authority over her son's employer's city contract. Congratulations! You have successfully completed the 2016 Mandatory Ethics Training Program. If you would like a summary of the training materials presented in this program or additional information about the city's ethics laws, please go to our website at www.cityofchicago.org/ethics. If you have a question about the appropriateness of certain conduct, call 312-744-9660 for a confidential advisory opinion.